Halfway through the dead village, a corpse turned its head to watch something move, and LowVinEah, who had studied the dead for 16 years, felt the bottom drop out of everything she knew. The dead did not watch. That was the fact her whole life rested on. The dead reached for warmth and they drifted and they drowned the world, but they did not track, did not observe, did not turn ahead to follow emotion the way a sentry does, because there was nothing behind their eyes to do the watching. She had just seen one do it anyway. And she went very still in the middle of the ruin, with Tobin frozen behind her, and waited to find out whether she had imagined it. She had not imagined it. A second corpse in a different house turned to look the same way. But to understand why that small thing turned LowVinEah's blood to ice, you have to know where she was and how she got there. 6 days west of the silent outpost, on the trail of the monitor who got out, LowVinEah and Tobin had come to a place called the Hollow. It was a fishing village once, before the world drowned, a cluster of stone houses in a coastal fold, long abandoned, the kind of ruin the interior was full of. The trail of her surviving monitor led through it. They had been 6 days following that trail westward, days of reading days-old sign and pushing hard and gaining slowly on a person who did not know they were coming, and the Hollow was simply the next place the sign led, a ruin to pass through on the way to the coast. Tobin's leg had healed enough that he no longer favored it, which was good, because LowVinEah had come to depend on him more than she had meant to. 6 days alone with one other person in the Dead Lands did that. He had stopped being an apprentice she was responsible for, and started being, quietly, something closer to a partner, still learning, still hers to keep alive, but useful now in a way she leaned on, and she had not decided yet whether leaning on him made the Founder's guilt better or worse. "It's thick with the dead," Tobin said as they came up on the ruin. He had learned to read her sense by watching her face. "You've got that look." "It's thick," LowVinEah agreed. "Drift dead, settled into the ruins, a lot of them." She read the Hollow the way she read everything, the cold pressure of the dead on her sense, where they stood, where the gaps were. Nothing wrong with them, just a lot. We go through quiet, we read the gaps, we don't wake them, same as always. She believed it when she said it. That was the part she would turn over later, that she had walked into the Hollow certain it was ordinary, and been wrong, and that being wrong about the dead was a thing that had not happened to her in 16 years. They went into the Hollow quiet, the way the watch taught, and for the first while it was an ordinary passage through an ordinary ruin full of the dead. LowVinEah led, reading the gaps, and Tobin came behind in her footsteps the way she had taught him, step where I step, stop when I stop, and when I put my hand flat you become a stone. The drift dead were everywhere in the Hollow, settled into the old stone houses, slumped in doorways, standing in the blind, patient way of the dead who had not yet sensed a living thing. Dozens of them. She threaded the two of them between the dead, going still when a drift carried one too close, moving when the gap opened, the slow craft of passing through the tide unnoticed. And then, halfway through, the dead thing in the doorway turned its head, and a second one turned after it in a different house, to track the same unseen motion, and the cold finger went down her spine, because two dead things turning to track the same thing was not two dead things. It was one thing looking through two pairs of dead eyes. LowVinEah, Tobin breathed very low. "They're looking at something." "I see it, don't move, don't make a sound." But it was already too late, and some part of her knew it was already too late, because the thing looking through the dead of the Hollow had already seen them, and had been watching them come for longer than she wanted to think about, and was only now deciding what to do. They were halfway through the Hollow when the dead stopped being a tide and became something else. LowVinEah felt it before she saw it, the way she felt everything first in the body. The drift dead settled in the ruin began to move, and they moved wrong. Not the slow blind pull toward warmth that was the only motion the drift dead had ever had in 200 years. They came up out of the ruins oriented, directed together, and they did not come at her and Tobin in the formless reaching way of the tide. They came in a pattern. Some moved to cut off the way back. Some moved to the high ground in the broken houses. Some came straight on while others swung wide, and the wide ones moved to flank, and the whole motion of it was coordinated in a way LowVinEah had seen exactly once before in her life, at Saltmere, in the thinking dead the warden kept, the precise ones, the tools. But that had been a handful of special dead among a mindless horde. This was the whole ruin. Every dead thing in the Hollow, dozens of them, moving at once like a single trained company closing a trap. Tobin back to back now, she did not have time to explain. "Something's wrong with all of them, move when I move." Tobin got his back to hers without a question, which was 6 days of trust paying out, and the dead of the hollow closed on the two of them like soldiers who had been waiting. LowVinEah had fought the dead for 16 years, and she had never once fought them like this, and the difference nearly killed her in the first 30 seconds. The drift dead were a weight. You read where they were, you moved through the gaps, you took the heads that came in reach. They did not adjust. They did not coordinate. They did not punish a mistake because they could not see a mistake because they had no mind. Her whole craft, 16 years of it, was built on that. These adjusted. She killed the first one to reach her, a clean stroke, the head, the body dropping, and the two behind it did not stumble into the gap the way drift dead would have. They flowed around the falling body, one high and one low, a coordinated reach that she only barely turned, taking a cold hand across the forearm before she got both blades working and put them down. And while she did, the ones on the flank moved, not toward her warmth. Toward her blind side, the side her attention had left to deal with the two in front, the exact gap a thinking enemy exploits. They're flanking, Tobin's voice tight from her back. LowVinEah, they went for my left the second I turned. I know, stay tight, don't chase. She killed another. Whatever's doing this, it's reading us, don't give it a pattern. That was the thing that turned her cold even as she fought. It was reading them. Every adjustment the dead made was an answer to something she or Tobin had just done. Show them a strong side, the dead shifted to the weak one. Commit to a kill, the dead used the half-second of commitment. This was not the dead being dangerous. This was the dead being commanded, moved, in real time, by something that watched and thought and answered. A hand on the reins working dozens of bodies at once with a precision the Hollow King's blunt horde had never shown. And here was the thing that did not fit, the thing that made the back of her neck go cold in the middle of a fight she could barely hold. There was no one there. She looked, mid-fight between kills, she stretched her sense and her eyes both across the whole of the hollow, hunting the controller, because there had to be a controller. That was the law. The watch had 200 years of observation behind it, and the law was absolute. The dead did not coordinate on their own. When the dead moved with intent, it was because something with a mind was close enough to move them. The warden at his tree line, the marked dead among his horde, always a mind present, always within sight of the bodies it drove. A hand on the reins meant a hand, and a hand meant a person could be found could be killed, and killing the hand freed the dead back into a mindless tide you could survive. There was no hand. She swept the ruin twice with everything she had, her eyes across the broken houses and the high ground, her sense across every living and dead thing in 200 paces, and there was no living person anywhere in the hollow but her and Tobin. No controller in the houses, no mind on the high ground, no warm body anywhere near the dead that were, right now, hunting her with the coordination of a trained company. The dead were being driven, expertly in real time, by nobody who was there. That was impossible. Everything she knew said it was impossible. And her sense, the thing that had never once lied to her, the thing she trusted past her own eyes, told her it was happening anyway. There's no one here, she said, half to Tobin and half to herself, and she heard the disbelief in her own voice. They're being moved, and there's no one here to move them. That's not possible, Tobin said. No, she agreed, killing another. It isn't. Fight now, be impossible later. Then the hand tightened, and the fight got worse, and LowVinEah learned that whatever drove these dead had been holding back to study them. The dead surged all at once, every body in the hollow committing together in a single coordinated rush, the way no horde had ever moved, a wall of the dead closing from 3 sides at once with the back cut off, timed so perfectly that for 3 terrible seconds LowVinEah was fighting in 4 directions and losing ground in all of them. A dead thing got a hand in her hair and another closed on her sword arm, and she broke both grips with a brutal twist that cost her balance, and she went down to one knee, and the dead came down on her in a coordinated mass that would have ended a lesser fighter right there. LowVinEah, Tobin abandoned his own guard and put himself into the dead piling onto her, blade working, taking a cut across the ribs to buy her the half-second to get her feet back. She got them. She came up killing, both blades, and got her back to his again, and for a moment they held in the center of a closing ring with the dead 3 deep on every side and no gap anywhere in the pattern. That was for me, she said, hard between strikes. You broke your guard for me. Don't do that again. If you go down, I can't hold this. You were going down, Tobin said. I was getting up. Tobin, don't. The job is we both walk out. Hold your guard. It was the founder's guilt speaking, and she knew it even as she said it. The cold arithmetic that a leader cannot let a young one die saving her, and underneath it the colder truth that he was right. She had been going down, and he had read it and saved her, and the boy was better than she kept giving him credit for. There was no time to feel either thing. The ring was closing. She had seconds before the coordination crushed them both, and clean fighting was not going to be enough. So they fought the impossible thing, and LowVinEah did the only thing that had ever worked against an enemy smarter than the dead were supposed to be, which was to stop being readable. It was the last card she had, and she played it because the ring was closing and clean fighting had just nearly killed her. She had learned it in the draw against the Warden's thinking dead. When the enemy reads you, you take away the pattern. She stopped fighting clean. She stopped giving the dead the strong side, weak side rhythm they were reading and answering. She fought ugly and random, killing on impulse rather than on form, changing which blade led, breaking her own habits faster than the unseen hand could map them. And she told Tobin to do the same in 3 hard words: fight ugly, no pattern, and the boy, 6 days trained and bleeding now from 2 wounds, did it. It worked a little. The dead's coordination was only as good as the hand's ability to read its targets, and 2 targets fighting without pattern were harder to read than 2 fighting clean. The trap loosened. Not broke, loosened. LowVinEah found a line through the dead toward the western edge of the hollow, the way out, and she took it, dragging the fight with her, killing as she went, Tobin tight at her back matching her ugly broken rhythm. They were 10 paces from the edge of the ruin when she felt the hand let go. It was the strangest thing she had ever felt, and she would spend a long time afterward trying to describe it and failing. All at once, between one step and the next, the dead stopped being soldiers. The coordination went out of them like a candle pinched out. One moment they were a trained company closing a trap, flanking and feinting and answering her every move, and the next they were just the dead again, the drift dead, the mindless tide, reaching toward her warmth with the slow blind hunger they had always had. The hand had let go of the reins, and the moment it did, the dead were only dead. She got herself and Tobin out of the ruin in the chaos of it, the 2 of them breaking free of dead that no longer coordinated to stop them, out onto the open ground west of the hollow, where she turned, blades up, chest heaving, to face a pursuit that did not come, because the thing that had made them a pursuit was gone. And that was when she saw the figure. On the high ground beyond the western edge of the hollow, at the very limit of what the failing light would show her, a single figure stood and watched. Not dead, LowVinEah's sense told her that much at once, a living person, warm, the only other living thing her sense had found in or near the hollow all night. But the figure had not been there during the fight. She was certain of it because she had swept the ruin twice for exactly this, for a controller, and there had been no one. Whoever this was had not been near the dead they drove. They had stood here, on this high ground, well outside her senses' reach during the fight, and from here, from too far away to be the hand by every law the watch knew, they had moved the dead of the hollow like pieces on a board. LowVinEah stared at the figure and the figure stared back, and across the distance she could make out almost nothing, a still shape, robed or cloaked, alone. Not a warlord's officer, not the warden's kind, the field commander kind who stood at a tree line in armor, something quieter. A single person who had reached across a distance that should have been impossible and driven dozens of the dead with the precision of a master, and who now simply watched her, having let the reins go, as if the whole thing had been a question they had asked and now had the answer to. The echo of it went through her cold, a question asked in the dead. She had felt that once before at Saltmere, watching the warden spend his hoard to test the coast, but this was not that. The warden was blunt. The warden threw a great dumb weight at a wall to see how hard it pushed back. This figure had done something surgical, something precise. A fraction of the dead moved with 100 times the skill, and the question it had asked was not how hard will the coast fight. The question had been something more like, let me see what you are. And it had its answer now, and it was not afraid of her, and it did not come down. She thought about going after it. For one hard breath, she thought about crossing the open ground and climbing the high ground and putting her blades through whatever could do this, because whatever could do this was more dangerous than anything she had ever met, and the world would be safer with it dead. She did not go. 3 things stopped her, and she weighed all 3 in the space of that breath, because weighing fast was the truest thing she did. Tobin was bleeding and spent, and could not cross that ground at her side, and she would not leave him alone on the edge of a ruin full of dead that might wake to a hand again the moment she was too far to help. The figure was on high ground at a distance, and a person who could move the dead from that far could move them again the instant she committed to the climb, and she could be halfway up the slope when the whole hollow rose at her back with a hand on it once more. To chase, it was to give it exactly the opening its skill was waiting for. And the third thing, the quiet one, she did not understand it, and going blind at a thing she did not understand was how capable people died. 16 years had taught her that the time to kill a thing you did not understand was after you understood it, not before, because before, you did not even know what killing it would take. So she did not go. She stood on the open ground with Tobin bleeding beside her and her blades still up, and she watched the figure watch her. And after a long moment the figure turned, unhurried, and walked back over the high ground and was gone, not fleeing. Nothing so urgent as fleeing, simply done, the way a scholar closes a book whose page they have finished reading. And the dead of the hollow behind her stayed dead, mindless, tied again, no hand on them at all. They made camp that night on the open ground, well clear of the hollow, and LowVinEah sat with her back to a stone and tended Tobin's shoulder and tried to fit what she had seen into everything she knew, and it would not fit. "Talk it through with me," Tobin said quietly when she had been silent too long. "You do that, you think out loud and it helps, so talk." He was right, it did help, and he had earned the inside of her thinking 6 days ago and earned it again tonight, so she gave it to him. "Everything I know about the dead says what happened tonight is impossible," LowVinEah said. "The dead don't coordinate unless something with a mind is close enough to drive them. That's not a guess. That's 200 years of the watch watching, and it has never once been wrong. The warden at Saltmere, he was there at his tree line in sight of his dead. Always a hand, always close. That's the law." "And tonight there was no hand," Tobin said. "There was a hand, it was just nowhere near. That figure drove dozens of the dead from outside my whole sense, from a distance the law says is impossible, with a precision the warden couldn't manage if his life depended on it." She shook her head slowly. "And that's the part I keep coming back to. It wasn't just that it was far, it was that it was good, better than anything. The warden's dead moved like a horde with a few smart pieces in it. These moved like a company under a master. That figure did something the Hollow King cannot do." She stopped. She had said the thing without meaning to, and now that it was said, she could not unsee it. "That's it," she said slowly. "That's the thing that's been wrong all night and I couldn't name it. It's not the Hollow King." Tobin waited. "Everything I've been chasing, the warden, the assault on Saltmere, the silent outpost, the construction, the monitors carrying word of that's all the Hollow King. One threat. The dead aimed like a great dumb weight at a target, blunt, massive, sacrificial." She looked back toward the hollow in the dark. "But what I felt tonight wasn't blunt. It was a scalpel. A few dead moved perfectly from impossibly far by one person who then walked away like they'd finished a chapter. That is not the same hand that threw a horde at Saltmere. The texture is wrong. My sense knows it even when my head can't explain it." "You think there are two of them," Tobin said, "two different things moving the dead." "I think," LowVinEah said carefully, "that I felt something tonight that doesn't fit the threat I came out here to find. And I've spent 16 years learning to trust the part of me that feels these things before the part that explains them. The part that feels says tonight was something else. Something the Watch has no name for because the Watch has never met it. The Hollow King is real and it's coming and it's everything we've been told. But it is not the only thing out here moving the dead. There's a second hand. A quieter one, a better one." She did not have a name for it. She would not have one for a long time. But the certainty had taken root, the way her real certainties always did ahead of the evidence in the body in the sense that had never lied to her. Two forces. Two different things, moving the dead by two different methods, and the coast knew about neither of them, and she had just become the first living person to feel the second one and live. She took the first watch because she could not have slept anyway, and she sat with her back to the stone and watched the dark over the hollow and did the accounting. She was further from understanding the world than she had been that morning, and she had learned to recognize that feeling as the most dangerous and most important one her work produced. The mornings when the world got simpler were the mornings she had missed something. The nights when it got stranger and larger and less explicable were the nights she had actually seen something true. Tonight the world had gotten much larger and much stranger, and that meant tonight she had seen something true, and the truth was that there was a second thing in the dark, precise and patient and far more skilled than the threat she had come to find, and it had looked at her across the hollow and decided she was worth a question. It had its answer now. She did not have hers. That was the wrong way around, and she did not like it, and there was nothing to be done about it tonight. She thought about the monitor still ahead of her, still running west, still carrying word of the Hollow King, the blunt threat, the one she could name. That mattered. That had not stopped mattering. Reaching her surviving person and getting the truth of the construction to the coast was still the job, still the race, still the thing that would save lives if she won it. But now there was a second thing in her, sitting cold beside the first. Somewhere out here was a hand quieter and finer than the Hollow King's, and it had let her see exactly enough of itself to know it existed and nothing more, and a person did not do that by accident. A person did that on purpose, which meant the second hand had wanted her to know it was there, or had not cared whether she knew, which in something that skilled was somehow worse. LowVinEah watched the dark over the hollow until the gray of dawn, and the dead stayed dead, and no hand touched them, and she did not see the figure again. But she felt the shape of it in the world now, the way you feel a second predator in a forest you thought you understood, and she knew, with the certainty that ran ahead of all her reasons, that she would feel it again. And next time it would not be a question. Next time it would have decided what she was and what to do about her, and she would have to be ready for an answer she could not yet imagine, from a hand she could not yet name.